Welcome everyone to Greywater Action's webinar series. I'm Laura Allen with Greywater Action and I'm moderating today's webinar. Today's topic is whole house greywater systems. We're going to be hearing from 3 different greywater companies about 3 greywater systems: GreyFlo, IrriGRAY, and Nexus E-Water. Before we get started, I have a few quick housekeeping items. If you have any questions or any comments, you can write them in the chat dialog on the left, and we'll be taking time for questions after each presenter presents their system. If you want to view your screen in a larger version of the slide, you can take your mouse and put it on the right corner of the slide and click and maximize will show up and you can maximize your slide. But just remember, if you do want to write a comment in the chat dialog box, you'll have to exit out of that screen. So we are going to start today and we're going to hear from Paul James, who's the founder of Water Renew with IrriGRAY Systems. And Paul, while you're introducing yourself, we actually have a slight change in the order of our presenters, so I'm going to quickly click through the one presentation and get to yours, so you could start introducing yourself.
Okay, thanks, Laura. So as Laura said, Paul James, I'm the co-founder of Water Renew. I'm going to discuss and explain the system. Thanks, Laura, for bringing that up. So I'm going to get straight into it. We've been doing greywater in Australia and the US, mainly in Australia since about the year 2000, and really started to develop properly in the US in 2011, now based in Plano in Texas. So I'm going to jump over that slide. A little bit more about us. I don't intend to read everything on every slide, of course, but what we have found interesting is that technology we've developed hasn't just been useful for greywater. We're also we develop other systems for other uses, such as well water filtration, automated systems, and so forth. Something that is of particular interest to us in Texas, we have very strong support from the building industry. We have actually an advisory board that is voluntary and has building leaders for Texas who help us in our marketing to builders across the state. We do have customers in California and other states, of course, but Texas is particularly interesting. What I'd like to point out on this slide is we develop for what we call the 95 percenters. These are the people who are just the average person on the street. They want to have a landscape. They want to make sure their landscape's not going to be affected by drought. They want to keep their water costs down. And lastly, as much as we'd all like to say that we've got a high priority on saving water, it's really priority number 3. Where we're presenting this to particularly new home buyers is that the incremental cost on a system like this we'll run through is about $4,000 at the upper end for a typical house, in addition or above the normal cost of a, say, sprinkler irrigation system. So the upfront cost is about $6,000 to $7,000, including drip line, including installation, whereas a normal irrigation system is about $2,500 at an intermediate level. What are the things we look out for when we design our products? It's not just about making the client happy. Of course, it is about giving solutions to the builders, the contractors, making it easy for them. And our feedback that we've received is their number one concern is long-term support of the product, that they can remotely check systems, be notified automatically if there are any issues, and also to remotely reprogram or make changes if a customer doesn't want to do it themselves. So we'll jump on to the next one. So here is what the system is. It is basically a small collection chamber, 18 inches in diameter. The effective height of it, or useful height, is 30 inches or depth, but you can have extensions to bring this up to ground level. Its job purely is to collect that water when there's between 5 to 10 gallons. It activates, pushes water through a self-cleaning filtration system, which is also a water management module. That's the component in the middle. And that then sends water out to up to 16 irrigation zones. All of this is controlled by the Android-based tablet, actually. This controller can work on the internet or off the internet. The vast majority of our customers want it to be connected to the internet because we then have built-in monitoring of their service. We do have a lot of other options that can connect in, such as rainwater storage. I'll touch on that later. Condensate is a big thing that's happening in Texas. Certainly RO waste, which is reverse osmosis, as long as it's diluted. We have other uses such as potable gardens or potable vegetable gardens, can't use grey water and so forth. We'll talk about those in a few minutes too. So here's a quick look. As I said, 18 inches diameter, 30 inches deep. This is a happy medium for the builders on new homes, although it also works very well for retrofits if it's pier and beam. It's not a storage unit. It's not intended to be. We believe that storage units actually create more trouble than they're worth. We do have larger basins, or in fact use twin basins for, say, commercial applications such as hotels. Hotels often do something like 600 gallons of very dirty grey water a day, so we handle that a little differently in the system. This shows inside. We actually have a pre-filter before the pump. This is a coarse filter, and we actually don't really call it a filter. It's basically a foreign objects bag. It is to stop the crazy stuff that gets into a system from getting through to the pump, and that is, we say it needs to be emptied once a year. Practically we found that a family of 6 people only need to empty that maybe once every 3 years. It's quite coarse, about more than 1/8 of an inch in the filter separation. The other valves inside the pumping basin determine whether the water is going to irrigation or whether it's going to waste, and we'll get to that in a minute. This is the basic filter module. This is one example. It's a Lakos twister clean. When it cleans or needs cleaning, the filter turns 90 degrees by the actuator. Water goes in a different direction and blows all the dirt and other bits and pieces off the filter going to waste. We have 2 valves feeding it. One valve is a backwash supply solenoid so that it only washes the filter. The other valve at the top is to give us potable supply, and that is essential in our experience to do things such as flushing drip lines to make sure that soap does not create issues with emitters in the future. You see we also have a meter. The meter is critical in the IrriGRAY system. Everything that we do is metered or the flow sensed. The next slide. Here's some other alternatives, disc filters. These are typically used on larger commercial applications, but also where there are water supply issues, such as low pressure or low flow. Not that the low flow is an issue for flushing drip lines on a regular basis, also for flushing filters. So these disc filters don't need as much water. They are not necessarily a cheap option. The first filter there is about a $1,300 option, and economically you can't justify water savings, as in this only needs to be cleaned 1/50th at the time of the screen filter. But you'll never recover that extra investment just because of the cost of water. However, as I said before, there are practical requirements in some installations to use these filters. This slide is a somewhat complex, but it shows a combination of a rainwater collection system together with the Greywater system and all the control elements, particularly popular. So it shows basically you could take this and design your own Greywater system with our components and any other components off the street. To briefly touch on the irrigation side, we use drip line, 2 different types of drip line. We have 2-gallon emitters or per hour emitters for landscape beds, generally the 3-foot separation and 12-inch centers, whereas turf must be every 12 inches. This is to prevent any striping effects. We'll note for everywhere in the US there's no restrictions on grey water, very few restrictions on potable water for drip, other than some locations such as San Antonio and Texas. We'll point out that this is a capillary irrigation system in that it is designed to have moisture in the soil every day. The IrriGRAY controller has been designed and developed by us, also manufactured by subcontractors. It is based on an Android tablet. It sits in the box all the time, and various sensors connect into, or cables on these sensors. This question came up. Actually, I'm going to respond to the two questions. I know, Laura, you're going to read them out. First
yeah,
question was, when is it?
Wait, actually, Paul, we're going to do the whole presentation and then we'll do the questions at the end.
Okay, all right. So, look, basically the box is a box. The tablet can sit there. You don't need to touch it. Now, if you want to, you can go to the internet, and we'll look at that in a minute. Or you can run it as a standalone unit. Where does things get interesting? This is all software controlled, and that controller is also software updatable. It self-updates to the correct version that we decide is correct for a client, which means that if a client has particular needs we haven't come across before, we can actually trial some changes in the system. Client doesn't have to touch anything, neither does their contractor, and we can monitor everything. And when we're happy with those changes, we can push those changes out to other clients as well. But when you think about Greywater, what's a great example? How do you manage Greywater throughout the year? If you're on a larger property, you've got a septic, you probably want to keep your Greywater away from the septic, reduces your maintenance costs, but you don't have anywhere to realistically use it for growing anything in the middle of winter. So this system is an advanced enough system that it knows when to put water out. During summer, you want to use every drop. You can just decide which months you don't want to use excess Greywater in growing things. Instead of going to the septic, you can have it go to a leach field and so forth. Then there are other issues such as preventative maintenance. And as I said, dripper lines really do need flushing. The dissolved soap in dripper lines, particularly with under turf drip lines, can cause clogging after generally 3 months, but we do preventative maintenance automatically every month. This is where I'd like to spend hopefully no more. I think I've got 3 minutes left, so we'll run through pretty quickly. This is the controller software on the internet. Now, what you see here is the same as is on the tablet. They're exactly the same, a couple of minor differences. But what is developed on the internet is also the same on the tablet. You can do this on the tablet. You can do it on the internet. You can create different versions of settings on the internet. You can select which version you want to make current. And within a minute or 2 minutes, I think it is, the tablet will automatically update itself to these new settings. But starting here very quickly, how the system is programmed. Start off with climate and water. Select where you are. It grabs all of the relevant evapotranspiration values for your area. You decide, for example, in January, we've got there January, February, November, December, we don't want to use too much Greywater, so that can be sent either to waste or it can be sent off to a disposal zone, and we'll see those in a minute. Further down that page, you can then set which days you are allowed to do various types of potable water use, and they are different for sprinklers as compared to dripper lines, and there are restrictions coming in about dripper lines in various areas at the moment, more so in Texas and California, it seems. So once you've set the information about where you are, then you can set up the zones. Here's an example, Zone 2, Greywater Turf South. This is one of our test units. We do a lot of testing. So this zone only has an area of 200 square feet. We've selected a particular planting type, the density, and which days of the week that it would normally get Greywater. And that is all there is to programming the system. There's no minutes, nothing else. The system calculates it for you. We can see here on this zone, we've got Greywater disposal, so you could say it's a leach field. Potable water sprinklers, we have, there's no plumbing connection between the two, but there is electrical control between the two systems. And potable water drip line is primarily for vegetable gardens. Once we've programmed it, it's been running for a while, then you can start seeing some of the charts. And the reason for so many different colors is we have different types of water. We've got green here, which is potable water only drip lines. Red is sprinklers. Purple is Greywater that's going out during the day. And the blue is makeup. So they didn't have enough purple in this test environment that we were running. Then you can start to see usage day by day, how much different types of water you're using. You can even see down to the minute level. We can zoom in further if we were live. At various times of the day, different symbols indicate when things have happened. It's very useful sometimes. I don't believe... there is one that I didn't show. There's at the bottom of that menu on the left, it says event list. You can actually see everything that happens or every bit of data that is sent from the controller to our internet server. And that includes information such as flow rates, pressure on different zones, temperature, battery levels, depth of water in the pumping basin, and so forth. This last one, and I'll finish, is to give an example or show. I'd love to show this live, but we trialed this yesterday and it's just too slow on the internet on this session. But one of the most valuable features that our installers have found is the ability to have this remote control. You can totally take charge of any individual function, singly or together, on the system to test flow rates, pressures, and that's normally done to detect if there's any blockages anywhere or whether any distribution lines have been damaged and so forth. So I've run out of time. Let's go to questions, I believe. Laura?
Yeah, there's a couple of questions, and I just wanted to clarify one thing. I know some people have joined this webinar series and didn't participate in our first one where we did more simple Greywater systems. There was a question about when is a filter required for Greywater and is it always required? And systems like Paul's, and he'll talk more, that use drip irrigation, they always require filtration. All the systems on today's webinar are using filtration, but there's many other more simple Greywater systems that don't, such as laundry to landscape, a branch drain. And we had a webinar on simple pump systems that just has larger outlets to prevent the clogging. So if you're interested in other types and systems that don't require filters, I'll refer you back to some previous webinars that we held. And then going on to the questions. Sure, go ahead.
Just a quick one on that, and you need to watch out for code requirements. A lot of the code requirements out there are somewhat historical, and they've made their way into local county level codes or regulations. You can always go back to your officials and query that. For example, certain areas still theoretically require 140 mesh filtration. This is something that people used to do 10 years ago before drip lines were proved to work at 80 mesh. So just watch out for that. Next question, Laura.
So the next question is, can all of your systems accommodate the rainwater storage option?
Absolutely. If the rainwater storage is basically, I'm going to take a sec to get back there, we're almost there. There we go. What we do is effectively consider that the rainwater storage is in line between potable water and the water management system. And then we treat the rainwater storage as a unit that never runs dry, so we actually manage how much water is in this rainwater tank. It's critical to always use rainwater when it's available so that you can then leave space in the tank for when it rains next time.
And I had a question about, I know that IrriGRAY is being installed in a subdivision in San Antonio, Texas. Could you give us an update on that project?
Yeah, it's actually San Angelo in Texas.
Oh, excuse me, San Angelo.
That's okay. It was an interesting one. It's been driven by the builders and the developers rather than the city, although the city is very happy to be supporting it. What has happened is the San Angelo came within 3 months of running out of water. The builders are under a lot of pressure. You know, the communities do not want more homes built unless these new homes are water efficient outdoors as well as indoors. So what happens in these situations is the developer gets together with his selected builders and says, I want this subdivision to be water efficient. It makes it easier for me to get my permits, less public resistance. And then what happens is when people see one subdivision that mandates it, then they start going to the other subdivision saying, look, you need to do this too because I'd rather buy in the other subdivision. I know that they're going to have green landscapes for years ahead. Whereas if they're not doing it, then there's a strong likelihood their landscape will be in a lot of trouble within 2 years.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Paul. And we will have more time, everybody, at the end of the presentation, so we can go a little longer than 5 if people have more questions. But we're going to switch over to the next presenter. And let's see, was your contact info? Let me just make sure your contact info is up there somewhere, or your website is there, so people can find you.
Yeah, the website, if people will try to listen, P for Paul, so p.james@waterrenew.com.
Great. Thanks, Paul. So now we're going to go to our, oh, you had a little more, but, oh, I see, you went back. Okay, so we're going to go to our next presenter, which is Bob Hitchner from Nexus E-Water. Now let me just switch you to over. And Bob is going to be talking about a system that does indoor as well as outdoor water. And let's see, Bob, can you hear me? Are you online? Let's see. Well, is there any other questions? I'm going to make sure I can get Bob up there. He is definitely on the call. Oh, do I hear you now, Bob? Let's see. Something, we're having a little bit of a technical difficulty. So let's try our next presenter, Sam Milani. Can you speak?
Yes.
Okay,
I can
great.
hear.
So Sam,
yes.
You can hear. Great. So we're going to skip back to the very front. Let me go back, and apologies. We had a little bit of a glitch with our flow and webinar and time changes and all these things. So we're going to jump back to the front. And Sam Milani from AWWS is going to be talking about the GreyFlo system. So thank you so much, Sam, for joining us.
Thank you, Laura. I'm Sam Milani, and I'm talking from Australia. So I'm in Australia right now. And I'll cover a little bit we've been in the Greywater business for the last 12 years. Australia is one of the driest continents on Earth. And we've been experiencing what you're experiencing right now, the drought in California, since probably 2003. So we've had a little bit, probably more experience with Greywater. I'm going to cover in the presentation a little bit on what we've learned the last 12 years. I'll give you also a summary of what the GreyFlo range is all about and what are the products we've developed, and then I'll go through some applications that we've done. So what we've learned, which is quite important, is that actually the smaller the tank, the more hygienic the Greywater system is. You actually do not need a very, very large tank to store Greywater. This is the concept that people have initially. They want to store as much Greywater as they can. The problem is that you're not allowed to store it more than 24 hours. So really there is no point holding it. You might as well get rid of it right away. And that's one thing we've learned. Second thing we've learned is that actually good pre-filtration before the pump is important, and trying not to put post-filtration. So all our systems have what we call pre-filtration. The water is filtered before it gets to the pump, but there is no post-filtration. The third thing that we have...
Welcome to the Any Meeting Webinar Quick Tour.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello? Yes, sorry.
We can hear you.
I've got a little problem with my computer. So the third thing that we've learned is that actually people do not like to clean filters.
In the top center of the screen are your primary meeting controls.
So,
for example, your mic, webcam, or sharing your...
Okay. I'm reading from my presentation. So installing basically self-cleaning filters, and that's what we developed because people don't like cleaning filters. And we've seen that. We spent about 4 years developing automatic backflush filter, which cleans the filters without, so nobody needs to actually take the filters and deal with that dirt. Drip seemed to be, as far as we're concerned, has been the best way of distributing water throughout the garden in a wide area. And also we've learned that with new homes, the best way to install a new home is actually doing it in 2 stages. We have developed what we call a builder's kit that is installed at the pre-lay stage initially, and then a finishing kit that is installed later on. We've also learned that water restrictions and government incentives are really, and the cost of water are the biggest drivers for gray water reuse. And we've gone into also commercial gray water reuse in the last few years. I'm just going to try to cover some of the systems we have. We have a very wide range of systems because not every plumbing is the same. So we did start with the GreyFlo, which was a little unit with vertical filter, so that you don't have to clean too often. But we also incorporated what we call a sludge trap in order not to deal with the sludge of the system. And that's been quite a popular system for people who want to install the systems themselves. So later on, we came up with systems that are more larger and more automatic. So the self-cleaning unit, you could see it on our website and also on Gray Hub's website. You will see how it operates. We actually backflush the filters with air, not with water. And that makes it a very, very low, very effective cleaning, but also very, very low in maintenance. So the GreyFlo PS is a little unit that we developed a few years ago, and that has been selling for the last probably 6-7 years now. We then developed more recently, the last 2-3 years, what we call the GreyFlo Pro. Again, self-clean. Most of our biggest systems now are all self-clean, and the clients all over Australia and South Africa and other countries really go with the self-clean, especially the ones who have had a little bit of experience with gray water. The 2-stage install for new homes is actually quite an important development. We found that actually if you did install the whole system at the beginning, you would risk to lose pumps and parts because often the plumbing is done before the house is even erected. So we have designed what we call a builder's kit, whereby the plumbers install it while they're doing the plumbing, and that actually saves quite a lot of money. Instead of bringing back a plumber on site, initially the plumber, while he's doing his plumbing, is installing the builder's kit, which is just the carcass of the system itself. Once the house is erected and power is available, and before doing the paving, then we sell them the finishing kit, and the finishing kit doesn't need to be installed by a plumber in Australia, whereas the builder's kit is part of the plumbing and needs to be installed by a plumber. So we do have what we call accredited installers throughout Australia that are actually installing what we call the finishing kit and installing the drip system and commissioning the system and showing the owners how the system operates. This has been the best way to actually install a system for new homes. As for the Greywater irrigation, we have gone with, we've done a lot of trials for many years initially, and we've gone through a drip line which has about 2.6, each emitter has about 2.6 gallons per hour discharge. And the passages are very, very large. Gray water can be dirty, and sludge tends to accumulate into the pipes, and having a very large opening actually helps to flush the drip lines every time. The drip lines we've had on site have been now more than 8 to 10 years they've been operating. We still recommend after maybe 10 to 12 years to change the drip line and put new drip line. Yes, also we've developed what we call a rotor valve, which allows the water to be rotated throughout the garden. So often you can't water all your zones, especially if you have a big garden and you want to water quite a large area. You would need a very large pump. So instead of using a very large pump, we can use actually small pumps and actually rotate from one zone to another. The rotor valve is a volumetric indexing valve, and it has one inlet and 6 outlets, and it discharges about 13 gallons per zone and then shifts to the next one. In that way, we've been able to do quite large garden with small units and also use small buffers, which means not a big tank, which means also less dislodging, less smell, potential smell on the system. I'm probably going to go now through some of the domestic applications. Fortunately, I don't seem to have the presentation in front of me. It seems to be loading.
Sam, I'm clicking through your presentation as you switch topics so people are able to see the slides.
Okay, good. Thank you, because I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry. It just didn't load this morning. I don't know why. Anyway, the domestic, the first picture you will see the GreyFlo. It's set up so that actually that was set up in a bathtub and laundry, so water came in the unit. It's wall mounted outside the building and has a filter and an automatic pump and pumps into the garden via the drip system. The drip system is below mulch. If you look at the second picture, you will see that the drip system is actually below mulch, and there is an entry, there is a three-way valve, and there is an overflow to sewer, so you can isolate the system. The third picture shows actually the GreyFlo in a new house, how it's been installed. You can see that everything is on the ground except the backflush system, which is wall mounted in a cabinet, and that wall mounting unit has an air blower and a controller which actually takes care of the backflush of the system. These systems can be installed and actually not touched for a couple of years. People have gone even for more than 2-3 years without touching them. Automatically it waters and reticulates the garden as soon as gray water comes in. The buffer tank on the PS is small, and it doesn't need to be large. What it does is as water comes in, water goes out also. So it has a little time delay so that it can accumulate a little bit of water before it discharges it into the garden area at the decline. On the fourth picture, you can see a retirement village that we've done in WA. There were 350 homes that installed. They were actually, this is one of our first ones, so all the systems were with manual filtration. So, and we realized after a while that one of the biggest problem was to actually clean the filters. If you had to go around every couple of months on 350 homes and actually clean the filters, it took a long time. They had a centralized office there, and that's what that is one of the incentives that pushed us actually to develop the self-cleaning system. The same way on the next photo, we did some mining camps where we had 75 systems, again, all manual initially, and then as soon as we got the self-cleaning, we went back and retrofitted the self-cleaning system. If you look at the picture, you will see the mining camp. This area is really, really hot, probably over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, or we say close to 50 degrees Celsius in the area. It's in the middle of the desert where very, very little grow. And if you look at the picture in 2009 and then 2011, you will see that the whole camp has been green. And it took, within 2 years, the whole area, and that didn't take one drop of fresh water. All the water came from Greywater. That camp gets a rebate because on their sewer fees, we have a law. I don't know if it's the same in the U.S., but when you discharge water into the sewers, you pay a sewer fee, and if you don't, so if you can reuse your gray water, they can give you a discount on your sewer fees because you are not discharging the water into the sewer. The next picture is the project that we did with Coogee Surf Life Saving Club. It's a surf life saving club in Perth, in Western Australia, where we're watering all the gardens with the commercial Greywater system. With commercial Greywater system, we have to use disinfection because the water goes into public open space. We don't remove the nutrients, but we actually ozonate the water and disinfect and actually reuse the water into the garden. This is all a subsurface system under the lawn, and it has pre-filtration and post-filtration. So we have both, and both are self-cleaning in that project. You can see the savings are quite considerable. With commercial system, we can save, quite a bit of gallons per year. So in the mining camp, about 3 million gallons a year. With the retirement village, about 5 million gallons a year. With the Surf Life Saving Club, about 300,000 gallons a year. We've also done some small commercial projects where we're reusing the water from a building to small garden. Now the garden is a lot smaller than the gray water coming from the building. So what we did is we just sized the system to cater for the garden. So the system only accumulates the amount of water that the garden needs. The rest of the water goes back to sewer because it's connected to sewer. And again, here it's a commercial application, so ozone has to be used to actually disinfect. The other projects that we've done, again, Caravan Park in Western Australia, where we're reusing all the shower water and watering the gardens around the cabins in the Caravan Park. We are right now presently doing another 2 large projects, which are their aged care facilities, and we are only reusing the gray water from the laundry washing machines. These laundry washing machines have 2 outlets. They have what we call a wash cycle, and then they have a rinse cycle. The rinse cycle comes into our gray water. The wash cycle goes into sewer. So we've been able to recycle quite a bit of water there, and we're doing 2 of these projects right now at present. So one project where they're installing the drip line all throughout the gardens.
Sam, I know you have a few more projects to share, but we're at the end of the time, and we can do your questions at the end of the presentation. I'm going to show the people the rest of your slides so they can see. We're at the very last one, actually. Perfect timing. So for questions for Sam with the GreyFlo, we'll do at the end at 5 o'clock, so we can stay on a little longer. But thank you so much for sharing that, and just want to make sure people, in the U.S. know that there are local distributors of these products. The closest one there's one, Jason Remley from Greyhub Irrigation, is in Paso Robles, and he came out to the Los Angeles Eco Village where I live and did a demonstration to a bunch of local installers of the system. So there are Sam sharing lots of great projects from Australia, and also just to know that these systems are in the U.S. too, which you probably were going to say, but we ran out of time. So I'm going to switch to our last presenter. Bob, are you on the line?
I am here if you can hear me.
Okay, I can hear you now. Yeah, we had a little bit of a problem. So I'm going to click through, and we're going to go to our final presenter, Bob Hitchner with Nexus E-Water. Oops, there we are, and I'll let you tell them a bit about yourself and the system.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, and thanks to Greywater Action for putting on this webinar series, and to the other presenters for talking about other systems. What I will try to do here is to highlight how our system may be a little bit different than the other ones. I guess it's lucky being last because you have a chance to contrast as you go along here. Our company is also born in Australia, but we are now headquartered in San Diego. And so a lot of my comments today are going to be talking, if I talk about code, I am usually referring to California code. And if you're from outside of California, you of course need to check with your local code. Regulations for Greywater do vary quite a bit from one region to another. And just keep in mind that what I'm talking about may not be about your specific jurisdiction. So ours, like the other systems that have been discussed today, ours is a whole home system. It is integrated into the plumbing infrastructure of the home. As you see in this illustration here, the black water, the waste, in other words, from toilets and from the kitchen, in this case, you see there's a little line going from the toilet out. That is the black water. And all of the other fixtures in the house are sources of gray water, and they have their own piping system which take the water out of the house and place it into an in-ground tank. From the in-ground tank, we take the water out, we treat it. We are actually disinfecting and filtering the water, and then we place it into a second in-ground tank, which becomes the primary source of water for all of your irrigation. And also in California and some locations, you can bring that water back inside the house to flush your toilets. And so, this is just a start here on how we set it up, and that it's an integrated system. So what I want to talk about today is the fact that our solution is a certified residential gray water treatment solution. And what is the significance of being certified? Secondly is the fact that the Nexus solution is an automatic solution. It works in the background. There's very little operation by the homeowner, and we can try to focus on what exactly we do expect of the homeowner. And then I'll try to give you a little bit of a background on how we treat the water, how we clean it up and disinfect it, and then give you some basic ideas about how you would install this, whether you're putting it into an existing home or into a new home. So what does it mean that we are a certified treatment solution? In the case of California and some other locations, the plumbing code actually identifies gray water that has been treated, and it categorizes it separately from untreated gray water. So the importance is to understand that there are two different categories of water, gray water, treated gray water and untreated gray water, and then you need to understand how can you use that water differently. The key things that you need to know is that the water that after its treatment, it is of a very high water quality. you can connect it and use it with any existing irrigation system that you may desire to use it with. And that's, first of all, it's because it's been so finely filtered that it won't clog up an existing filtration system. But secondly, the other really key point here is that you can use this in spray irrigation, in above ground drip irrigation, as well as in subsurface irrigation. And you can use it on any plants that you may have in your landscape, including edible leaf vegetables or root vegetables. And then, as we said earlier, you can go inside and flush the toilets with it. This is to give you an idea of how clean the water is. This is looking at BOD, biochemical oxygen demand of water, which is a very typical measure that sanitation and sewage treatment plants would use to measure the level of pollution of organic matter in water. And the lower the number, the better. And you see that, sewage has a BOD of about 500. Untreated gray water has it about 200. And then as you get down into the lower one where we've expanded it out, tertiary treated sewage is basically the water that is disinfected and treated and put into purple pipe systems for recycling use. And in the state of California, the BOD in that water needs to be on average 15 or below. Our system is certified to the NSF 350 standard, which requires that we have a BOD below 10. And in fact, when we tested out with NSF, our BOD was between 0 and 5. It was very, very low and very close to what potable water would be. So it is a very clean, recycled water by the time we finish treating it. So as I said before, it's an automatic system. What does that mean? Because it is treated, we are able to treat the water and then put it into storage, and then we can use it at any time. We don't have to use it within any specific time frame. So what we do is we try to keep a full tank of cleaned water on site, and then the irrigation controller will call for water when it wants water, when it needs water, and it will pull the water out of that tank. And so your irrigation control system may need to be tweaked a little bit based on the size of the tank, but really you're going to manage it just like you would manage the irrigation control system on your landscape today. It works in the background. The homeowner is not asked to actively manage the system. It sets up and then it operates, and it will operate continuously. We have automated alert systems. So, there are several maintenance cycles in a year when you need to either change a filter or change out an ultraviolet bulb. And when you need to do that, you'll receive a text or an email that tells you that it's time to do so. The other one is because it's automatic, it has the ability to top up with city water whenever it needs to. So if you go away from home for 3 weeks in the middle of August, you really don't even have to set up the system to operate differently. You would just say that if I don't have gray water in the tank, please fill it up with city water instead, and we'll use that while I'm away. So an automatic system, it doesn't require active homeowner engagement to operate properly, and we think that's a real advantage. This next slide just gives you an idea of how it might work during the year in a Southern California city. If you had a 2,000 square foot landscape and you had 4 people living in the home, what you would find is that during the year you have very different irrigation requirements in the landscape, and there may be several months in the year, as we indicate by where the blue lines come above the red line, where the landscape may require more water than the Greywater system is able to provide. And you can either set it up that in those times it only gives as much water as you have Greywater, or you can set it up to provide as much water as the irrigation system says it needs. And in the latter case, what it will do is it will call on city water to top up the tank as needed. As I said before, we've got an app for that. It's going to tell you how much water you are recycling, how much water you are putting into irrigation, but more importantly, it will tell you when you need to service the system, which is usually on as I said before, a twice annual cycle. So let's take a really quick look at the treatment appliance. Remember, we have two tanks underground, and then we have this treatment appliance that sits above ground. This is what the treatment appliance looks like when the cover is off. And as I go over here, this gives you an idea of what happens in the treatment process. We pull water out of the raw gray water tank, which is on the left. We take it through coarse filtration, which essentially takes out the hair and lint that may be in the water. We bubble the water. We have a micro-foaming system that actually aerates the water, and because it's aerating soapy water, of course, it foams and bubbles, and the bubbles rise to the top, and then those bubbles are wicked off into sewer. After that, we have two different levels of filtration. We have an activated carbon filtration, and then we have a very fine mesh filtration. And by the time those processes are complete, the water really looks and smells like drinking water. And at that point, we expose it to ultraviolet, and that kills the pathogens that are in the water. So we're doing disinfection at the very end. And then when that is all complete, then we put the water into the tank on the right, which is the cleaned water tank. And as long as there is raw gray water available on the left, we will keep processing water until we can fill the tank on the right. And when the tank on the right is filled, then we wait until there's some use of water before we will treat any more water. Installation requirements. The best thing for you to do is to go and download our Nexus guide to the Recycle Ready Home. It's on our website, which is at nexusewater.com. It's on the home page, and you'll see a download button there. That will give you the detail, but these 8 points here are really the critical things. The home needs to be dual plumbed. The gray water and the black water need to leave the home in about the same location. We put two tanks in the ground. We pre-configure a mounting bench, and I will show you pictures of that in just a second. And then we put the appliance on. We need an electrical outlet, and we need nearby water available as top-up. And then all we do is we connect the treated water tank to any irrigation system, and you are ready to rock and roll with gray water. So this is what the system looks like next to a house as an illustration. We have the two tanks in the ground, and then we have a device nearby to pull water from the raw tank and put it into the clean tank. Here is what the above ground tank looks like. You can see that it's connected to an electrical connection there. It also has a water supply that's coming in nearby. Here is what it looks like when you are putting the tanks into a home. In this case, they did it after the main home had been already constructed. Normally, in the case of new home constructions, we would do this during initial rough plumbing trenching of the home at the very beginning. Here are the backhoes at work. It's a lot of work if you do it by hand, but it's not a lot of work when you already have the backhoes on site. Got to get everything into the holes correctly. They have to be lined up and connected together. You see, we have some venting that works out of the raw gray water tank, and that's what's being connected up in this case. And then here is the bench that I've talked about. You see that it's placed in concrete piers here, and the plumber is going to come in, and at the next step, the plumber is going to pre-connect all of the different connections to the tanks, to the potable water supply. The electrician will come in and bring the electric power in, and then it will look like this. Well, I guess it doesn't really look like this, but this is when the bench is off there on the right and the tanks are here. Here, this is what it looks like. And you see a pre-configured bench, and you have your gray water access port that is there. And all we have to do at that point to make it ready for recycling is to level it up, bring everything together, fill in the ground around the tanks, and then we put the device on top, and we're connected to the irrigation valves, and we are ready to go. So this is what it looks like above ground, but there was a lot of work that went in behind the scenes and under the ground, obviously. So I highly recommend that you go to our website, that you download our guide to the Recycle Ready Home, and this is useful whether you want to retrofit your home or whether you're thinking of building a new home. If you are building a new home, you should ask your builder to make it recycle ready, and this should be part of what the builder constructs from the very get-go. It is not expensive to make a home recycle ready if you do it from the very beginning of the home. But anytime you retrofit a home with a Greywater system, you're going to incur extra costs. So if you're building a home, tell your builder, make it recycle ready, and you can get them to come and download our guide to it. Any questions you have, besides the ones that we talked about here, I'll be glad to take them by email at that address there. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Bob. There's a question about the approximate cost for the system.
Yeah, okay. Right now we are selling in homes in California, and we're mainly focused on new construction, so we are selling primarily through builders. What we expect is that the installed cost for the builders in nearly all cases is going to be about $10,000 to $12,000, and that includes the additional costs that the builder would incur for dual plumbing and for installing the system. The components themselves are more on the order of $8,000.
So there's another question. Do you know, Ed says, I live in San Jose. Are city officials familiar with this type of system, and will they grant permits? Have you ever installed in San Jose area?
Well, I think that it's a great question, and I'll tell you that the correct way to answer it is that almost every jurisdiction we go to, they are not familiar yet with treated greywater systems. And so the reaction from the building officials where you get your permit does vary a great deal from one jurisdiction to another. But the important thing for anyone in California to remember is that this system is specifically permitted under the California Building Code. And most building officials, when they hear greywater system, will be thinking about an untreated greywater system. So it may take a little bit of time for them to, look all of this up in their code books and to realize that it is okay. The answer is yes, it will be okayed, because it is permitted under California Building Code, and basically local building departments in California either have to follow the California Building Code or they need to have their own building code in place that generally has to be stricter than that of the state building code. And I know for a fact that basically no jurisdiction in California has standards that relate to treated greywater that are stricter than the California Building Code. I have spoken extensively with county building officials in Santa Clara County, but I actually have not worked with the San Jose Building Department.
Okay.
And yes, I can provide materials to work with the San Jose City building officials, and I'd be very happy to work with anyone who's interested in any major jurisdiction in California.
Yeah, and if people are interested in any of these systems, usually the reps who sell them or the designers or someone in the company, like these presenters, are extremely helpful with working with the cities and providing the information. I know people who've gotten permits for all the different systems, and well, actually not Nexus, but you just answered that question, Bob. So I know the other two systems, they will work with your cities or counties as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure everybody would do that. Yeah.
Yeah, which is very, very helpful with getting the permits. So I want to thank everyone. We are going to stay on for questions, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone is thanked. It was a really informative webinar. I learned a lot, and these were very brief introductions to the system. So if you are interested in them, you can go to their websites and learn more. And I also just wanted to do one clarification before we get into the questions that are still out there about treated gray water and removing BOD, and then untreated gray water, which is irrigating plants. And there's a lot of misconceptions about what is dirty and what's pollution and what do you need to take out of gray water, and it really depends on what you're going to do with it. So if you're going to store it in a tank and then send it into your home to flush your toilet, you definitely need to treat it and remove the nutrients in the water. Otherwise, they will start to get pretty yucky. But if you're going to use it for irrigation, those nutrients are actually fertilizer. So it's not a bad thing to have BOD in your system, depending on what you're going to do with the water. I just wanted to make that clarification. And then get into questions. I believe that all the presenters are now unmuted, so you can all jump in. There was a question, a kind of comment about low sewer flows, and I think Paul was going to answer that. So a concern about if we're taking out all this gray water and using it for irrigation, it's not going into the sewers. There is some concern about low sewer flows and not functioning properly. So Paul, do you want to answer that question? Let's see, I'm not hearing you, so maybe we'll...
I can give you
an
answer if you want.
Sure, go ahead.
No, this is Sam.
Yeah.
Look, this has been in Australia, of course, there's been, but this is not correct. The systems are designed to a standard where the water should flow regardless whether there is only toilets or there is, because there are some areas where you have offices only, where there is no showers and laundry, and actually water needs to flow. So when the design standards are followed, you shouldn't have any problem in terms of flows in sewers, all right, even if the gray water is taken out. All right. Now, toilet flushes, there is technology out there where they've reduced toilet flushes to quite very, very low, like less than a gallon, going out to flush the toilet. This you can create a problem if you do have very, very low toilet flushes. But otherwise, no.
Yeah. There was a question about distributing the GreyFlo system in Northern California. I mentioned a more southern, central California dealer. Are there any in Northern California, particularly the Bay Area?
Look, we right now we have turned the distribution onto GreyHub. So GreyHub is now basically our master distributor in the USA. We had a distributor before in Arizona, but decided that GreyHub was more qualified. So they are actually our master distributor and are establishing distribution shifts in different areas in the U.S. So I'm sure they will have people up north to sell and install the systems.
So go to GreyHub Irrigation, and then you could ask them, and they'll find somebody
correct.
in your area.
Correct.
Okay. There was a question about a chlorination system, and I'm actually not sure which presenter it was referring to or which system. Did one of your systems use a chlorination? It says, how does the chlorinating system work?
We have a commercial system where we have a chlorination, and it's only a very, very basic system where actually it's tablet chlorination. So normally we use ozone, but in that case they didn't want to go through the expense, so they decided to go, and the council approved the chlorination because these people are doing other chlorination, and they could be on top of it, so they could replace the tablets regularly.
Thank you. And there I just have a note for people from Jason from GreyHub Irrigation that he does do consultations in both Northern and Southern California. So the Bay Area person, you can get in touch with him. And Paul, can can we hear you now? You had another comment about the low flow sewer. Not hearing Paul. Webinars always have the wild card of the technology. Sometimes things don't quite work as you want them to. Well, if we can hear you, please jump in, Paul. So if there are any other questions, please type them in. I think we have gotten them all answered. And we'll end there. Thank you very much, all of you, for your time and your
Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks, Laura. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.